Have you guys done any podcasts before? Have you? I mean, I'm sure you guys, with the reach y'all have, you
I just
probably.
don't like cameras. So
Well, these are off.
that's why I thought.
They're just, yeah.
I thought, okay, well, the microphone is great. I can talk.
Yeah.
But it's like when I know there's a camera on me, I'm like,
Yeah.
It's just a, no, it's just a, these are just for show.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
for show.
Yeah. But
The red light.
yeah.
I've totally become comfortable with having a face for radio, so
There
it's
you
like
go.
it's
good.
totally cool, man. I just don't worry about it.
Welcome to the Narrowgate podcast. I'm Weston,
And I'm Logan.
and this is the Chris and Elaine Whitney episode. Chris and Elaine Whitney, they run an amazing organization based out of Nashville called One Gen Away, where they provide food at no cost for those who are in need of food.
I love this couple. I think it's so great that we got to interview them both.
Yeah, totally.
Their story is amazing. And again, if you want to hear more about Narrowgate Foundation or One Gen Away, check out our show notes. And we hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, so we like to start off every podcast asking two questions. And the reason we ask these two questions is because it is integral to the Narrowgate, reality. I mean, we make it a point to try and help people discover identity and purpose.
Yep.
And so two of the questions that come up, and I think in everybody's life at some point, is who are you and why are you here? And we help guys try to find answers to those questions. And so we sort of started making it our practice to start off each of our episodes asking those two questions. And it's sort of your opportunity to introduce yourself. You can answer it however you want to, but why don't you start by telling us who are you and why are you here?
Well, we're Chris and Elaine Whitney, and have no idea why we're here, but we're grateful to be here. No, that's a great question. Who we are, because we just had some friends in town that we've known for 30 years, and so we've lived a lot of life. I just turned 62. Elaine just turned 59. So we've been believers for 36 and a half years. Yeah, 36 and a half years. We got saved together, water baptized together, filled with the Spirit together. I mean, like literally baptized together. So we've done.
When we were really young.
Really young. Yeah, done a lot of life together. And we have 3 grown children, 6 grandchildren. Our middle daughter was born with spina bifida, one of the greatest miracles we've ever seen. So she walks, but told us she never walks, 17 surgeries. She's going to be 33 soon. And once we got saved, the journey has been insane. We've been able to go to 13 countries and share the gospel. We've been called into the worst situations in people's lives. I'm talking about, I'm talking life and death situations to pray with people. We've worked in ministry for probably 36 years. And we're employed most of that. I was employed most of that. So was in a large church as an unpaid youth pastor. That's a whole nother background story. So who
For
we are.
13 years.
Yeah. So who we are now is we're just a couple that's passionate about Jesus and has a mission to mobilize people to serve anyone unconditionally. And we feel like if we could motivate, especially the body of Christ, to just start serving their communities unconditionally, that we would see the world change for the kingdom. Just the easiest way to share the gospel is serving someone with no agenda.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple, but really hard. And I don't know why it's so hard. I don't know if we figured that out yet.
Man.
But for some reason, it seems really hard.
So can you tell us a little bit about your organization, One Gen Away? I mean, obviously, even just hearing that brief introduction, there's a lot more to you guys that you identify as a part of yourself, even than what you do. But I mean, obviously, this ministry, this organization is impacting. What do you guys even do? Numbers, countless lives? Can I say countless, or do you guys track that?
I don't
stuff?
even know. I mean, like this morning, we just left a distribution, served 250 cars.
Just families.
250 families, a grocery cart full of food.
For free.
So if you take the average, 3 point something, so over 800, 900 people were reached this morning. And that happened last weekend and the weekend before that. And the week.
Wow.
So that happens 37 times in Middle Tennessee.
And not only do we give them food, but we also pray with them. So there's one question. We don't ask any other questions except, is there anything we can pray with you about? And that's really where it all happens. And I think that started when our daughter had spina bifida almost 33 years ago. Chris lost his job at the same time and we went bankrupt, and I was in the food lines, and you feel the shame. Nobody really puts that on you, but you just feel embarrassed and shame. And so our whole goal now is to just bring dignity and honor and hope to people in a really hard situation, but to tell them that it's only a season, that you will come out of that, because when you're in it, you feel like you'll be there forever. But yet we know that God's just brought us so far, right? And so that's why we don't ask questions. So whoever is in line gets food, because we just want to bring hope, honor, and dignity, because we know how it felt, And so, so that's what we do. Really.
I love that, because as soon as you start trying to qualify who should and who should not get food, you're introducing this sort of like legalism, and like routine and process, systemized thing into something that is just so pure, like there are people who are hurting and that are embarrassed about it and feel like they're the only ones. And to know that there's, people like you and places like One Gen Away that they can go to not just get what they need, but not feel like they're bad for needing it.
Yeah, one of our board members put it this way. It's like we ask people to prove they're sufficiently deficient to need help.
Say that one more time.
Doesn't that just mess with your head?
Yeah.
It's like we ask people to prove they're sufficiently deficient to need help. And there is and that is just the opposite of Jesus. To me, that's the opposite of the message of the gospel and light of the world, the hope of the, you know what I mean? And it's like, and so, hey, you need to prove to me that you're in such bad shape that you now need me.
You're worth my ministry.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, didn't even feel good coming out of my mouth right there.
That's kind of jacked up in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? When you think about it that way. And so, that going back to that question about who we are, it's, I've struggled a lot over my lifetime with, what people call today imposter syndrome. I've got a high school diploma. I've never been to college. Not even 1 hour of credit. I've never been to seminary. I'm sorry, I get those two messed up. On the podcast too.
Yes.
Everybody calls it cemetery.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, that's a.
Oh, that was intentional. See,
Yeah.
that was on the other.
That was
I didn't sleep great last night, so these jokes are gonna.
Yeah. No, that's funny.
Everybody will appreciate that's watching. So, and if not, get over it. You'll be okay.
Yeah.
So I have to be here hitting him. Like
Good.
But
we appreciate that.
So I struggled for a long time with that, and I was a youth pastor, preached every week, was unpaid, had a full-time job in a 4,000 member church, and then for a year I did middle school and high school, preached twice a week. And so
and a father
yeah,
and a husband,
Mhm.
that kind of was down a
and had
little
that all jacked up.
Yeah.
So
had his priorities a little.
yeah. So I'm
whacked
pretty
out.
transparent about I had the whole serve thing screwed up. I was serving a lot, but I wasn't serving in the correct order. And so I made a lot of mistakes in that area. But so I struggled when I moved here. We moved here just over 19 years ago to start a church, and we had no financial support and we didn't know a soul. And we moved to Franklin.
We always say that it wasn't the brightest move, but it was obedience. That's kind of what we always say.
That's good.
Yeah. So it's, we did the crazy. I mean, most people thought we'd lost our mind. And because of a really, really challenging situation when we left our church, we didn't realize how wounded we were because we lived in a weird bubble, like I said. And then once you get out of the bubble and you start to look back and you start to see, and then how just jacked up we were, and how I have a pretty intense personality, but I had it in a really bad way. it's like they wouldn't even let me go. She's like, we can't let you go to meetings unsupervised because I was
But that has
just
to be there to grab his
Right.
leg if he
Yeah.
says
Yeah.
something that he shouldn't
well,
say.
it was
you know?
I was just out of whack, man. I was so out of balance. You know what I mean? I had wounds and hurts I didn't know I had.
For sure.
And so they just would come up, especially if I'm a group of pastors and I'm passionate about serving and, you know, and so anyway, it was so that's part of that journey. So then I was praying while we were here. I'm just praying one day and God dropped this phrase in my heart, one generation away. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what it meant. I just reserved a domain name. And that was the beginning of a journey that we just had no idea what was going to happen. But
What an interesting step of faith in the modern world
Mhm.
to be like, God is speaking this to me. I don't know what it means yet, but I'm going to take a step in faith and get that domain name.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's a genuine step in faith.
No doubt.
I'm curious
And
to
I
hear
love
where
how you
that
emphasize
goes.
in the modern world, like maybe back in the day, you know, you would have reserved a copyright or like a, you know, like a document or no domain name. That's the times we're in.
yeah, well, that's and I joke about
This was, gosh, I mean, it was like 19 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, I joke about this that we so when I joke about I remember pagers, man, when I had to go to a payphone, like when our first child, she's like
I did 911 on the page. You're like, get
You know,
home now.
yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So I had to go find a payphone. People don't even know what a payphone is now.
Right,
You know what I mean,
right.
dude? You had to go find one and then what do you want? You know, and but that whole that part of the journey, moving here was like the greatest step of obedience
And of faith, we didn't know a soul. I mean, we knew no one, but we knew God called us here to Franklin.
Yeah.
So what we did is we grabbed a map
Crazy.
of
At
borders of Nashville because we what we did is we prayed separately and we said and then we came back together and I'm like, what are you thinking? And Elaine goes, I think we're supposed to go to Nashville. I go, me too. Neither one of us ever been to Nashville in our lives.
Wow.
And so we got in a car with a couple that they went to Assembly of God Church. We went to it was a Word of Faith church. Insane, non-denominational, but we had prayer meetings on Sunday nights and they would come to our prayer meeting and they had prayer meetings like on Thursday afternoons for businesses. So we would go there to their prayer meeting. And so they ran a company, really strong believers. And we said, we're going to go to Nashville and just drive around and pray. And so they jumped in a car. Elaine had a lumpectomy the day before. It was benign. She wasn't supposed to travel. Gets in a car, 5.5 hour drive. He
goes, maybe we should postpone it. I'm like, heck no, we're going. Grab
So
the pillow and we're headed out.
So we drove around and we drove for a day and a half and we stayed at a hotel on Old Hickory in
the pink one back
65.
In the
It was
day.
back
yeah.
yeah.
I think it was a Hilton now or whatever.
And so we drove around and then we were down at Edmondson Pike and Old Hickory in the Walgreens parking lot. So if you all have been up there, you know,
yeah.
I mean, I remember standing in that parking lot and I looked at Elaine and I said, we're going to move here.
Wow.
So
knowing nothing,
but
just
from
other
that
than
point, we would come here. So we did youth, right? So everybody loved our kids and they babysat our kids. So we would just leave on the weekends. We'd come to Franklin and just walk the land and pray for 7 years before we moved.
Wow.
because our daughter with spina bifida had severe scoliosis, whole nother crazy deal.
Miraculous.
She had to have her. They
110-degree curve.
literally disconnected her spine and put it back together.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
She went from 110 to 37 degrees, but got paralyzed in the surgery.
The last hour.
So instead of a 2-week hospital stay, it almost 2.5 months
Wow.
with 2 other children.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so
We teach her how to walk all over again.
So that delayed our move here. So, I mean, there was just a lot of hiccups on the road. And so to encourage people, man, that just because something delayed doesn't mean it's not God.
Mm-hmm.
There's lives tied to our obedience, right?
Yeah.
So as hard as the wait was, the timing ended up being exact. Even though we didn't want to wait, right? We're all, man, I'm a doer. I'm like, go, you know, aim, fire, ready, whatever. You know, it's like, no aim, fire, ready, aim. Just, you know, that's just not how I function. But God's had to teach me patience, being in his timing and in his
But we
thing.
did learn not to pray for patience because then you get trials, right?
Right.
So I'm like, we're not going to pray for patience anymore.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in that journey, I mean, in that hospital stay with my daughter, that second one, man, we had so many killer stories, dude. Because we would I like to walk when I pray. So I would just pace the hospital floor. And I looked in this waiting room. I got to tell this story.
No, I was about to say, can you tell us one?
It's-
We like
yeah.
stories here.
Yeah.
This story is, dude, we got so many of them.
We
So
won't be here for 6 hours with our
we
stories.
could almost
though,
be.
but-
We can have you back sometime. I mean,
Yeah.
now that-
So anyway, we saw this couple crying, like this doctor, white coat, gets up and they just start weeping.
Mhm.
And I told Elaine, I said, we got to go pray for them. So our couple good friends of ours are Jill and Charlie LeBlanc. They're worship leaders. They led worship for Joyce Meyer. Jill and her daughter came up and they're in my daughter's room. She's going to have 2 visitors worshiping with her and playing guitar. So we're in the hallway praying, see this couple.
To give us a break,
to
right?
give us a
But,
break.
but we knew we had to pray for this couple.
We feel like if you get into a hospital, man, go find somebody that they need to be prayed for. The best thing you can do when you're in the middle of a trial is find someone else in a trial and go pray for them.
Yeah.
Because what you'll find is what you're praying for them, you're really praying for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing like hearing yourself speak something out loud because you hear with a different voice. Like you do worship, I speak for them. When you hear yourself recorded, you go, I don't sound like that.
Sure.
Just because you're hearing with your inner ear, not, like we hear. Anyway, so that's just a bit of peace. So when we walk into this room, we walk in the waiting room and we just walk up to these people, which is this is our intro. We're really slick. We said, hey, you don't know us. I'm Chris Whitney. This is Elaine Whitney. And hey, man, this is going to sound crazy, but we just feel like God told us to come talk to you
Pray with you.
and pray with you. Just real simple, crazy. And they just look at us and they looked at us like, holy crap. They just looked up and all you could see was like, thank you. How did you get here? Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
But we need God right now.
Mhm.
So they literally, the woman grabbed Elaine so hard, I thought she was going to chokehold her and pass out.
hugging me
She was
so hard.
hugging her so
And
tight.
crying.
And so they just told us, they said, they had a Down syndrome child, and they said she's got to have open heart surgery in the morning, and they don't think she's going to make it.
Mm.
That's a great way to meet somebody.
Mm.
Yeah.
It really is.
To
Yeah,
think
but
of the
thank
internal
God.
dialogue that was happening
Yeah.
seconds
Right?
before
But I
you
mean,
guys walked up.
I just feel like it was so God at that perfect timing for us to, again, just to be obedient to what God's called. Because that's not easy just walking up to somebody,
Sure,
you know. But it's so needed because we knew that something was going on, right? And then we ended up becoming friends. Their daughter made it through the surgery, lived till she was like 9 years old. We kept in touch with them. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, she lived to 9 and died of cancer.
Mm.
Not anything to do with her heart, which
Wow.
was sad. But I mean, just to see God do that miracle in this couple
Mm-hmm.
and really learning to yield to the voice of God in every phase and every second of your life. I mean, that to me is,
Yeah.
if anything about who we are, it's about just being sensitive to the waiter, the waitress, the people, stories, man. I mean, just so many of them that in restaurants or just random places where we just felt like God said, go talk to them.
Yeah.
You don't have to be weird or a freak about it, but is there anything I can pray with? Is there a more disarming question than that?
Mm.
Man. Yeah, we've got an axiom, and it's you're best ministered to when you're ministered through. And so you're saying, like, when you're dealing with something or when you're in the middle of a hard thing in life, the best thing to do is go find somebody else who's dealing with a hard thing and reach out and minister to them. Like that is the process through which God ministers to our own hearts,
Yes.
right? Is whenever we reach out and we, connect that vertical relationship we have with God through a horizontal relationship with others, like the Spirit flowing through us is the healing process and the thing that's also producing in us something of a far greater value, that character. That's cool.
That's true.
Yeah.
So we came here, planted the church, and started and prayed and reserved the domain name. And then I was praying and I felt like God said, we're a generation away from eliminating racism. Our oldest daughter, she was like 16 at the time and took me back when she was about 9 years old in St. Louis, where I'm from. Elaine's from Greenville, Mississippi, and this is where we got married. But she was watching a special on Dr. King, and she's like weeping on the floor. And I said, Lauren, what's wrong? And she goes, Dad, why are they spraying the brown people?
Mm.
And it took me back and remembered that. And I thought, man, their generation, she's now 35, doesn't see color as a barrier like we did, like we were raised and taught, especially in Mississippi. And then so one generation away from eliminating racism and then denominationalism. We're separated by the names on our buildings.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's like the greatest device the devil's used to neuter the power of the church and the gospel.
Hmm.
And then Miss Rena happened. Miss Rena was an African-American lady. So Elaine went to work outside the home for the first time in 17 years. And as God had planned, he had her work at Mid-Cumberland Community Action Agency in downtown Franklin. So they serve all the counties that touch Davidson, and they do food commodities, rent assistance and stuff. And this guy would bring bread and drop it off from a place called Second Harvest Food Bank. And he's like, hey, we could bring a 53-foot trailer to a parking lot, give it away. And she goes, I'll tell my husband. So she comes home and tells me. And at this time now, I'm connected to Empty Hands Fellowship in downtown with all these pastors. And Neil Paez at La Casa de Mi Padre does a Cinco de Mayo thing where they were giving away clothing and food to people in need. And I was on the food committee, and I'm like, dude, we could get a tractor trailer load of food for $2,000. Let's do it. And we did. And that birthed One Gen.
Wow.
Then I knew that's what One Gen was for.
Dude, how I just think it's really cool, even just to see you telling this. I mean, how many years removed from this are we?
Oh gosh,
I mean,
that was 11. That was 12 years ago, probably
Wow.
now.
I mean, even just you telling, like, your wife just telling you the possibility, your face like lit up. Still.
Oh yeah.
There's no
And I
doubt
ju-
what you're
It
passionate
is.
about.
There's
Yeah.
no doubt,
Yeah,
man. This
yeah,
is
no,
that
it-
you're stepping into your purpose. Like,
No,
even
and
just
I just told
yeah.
I just told a group of five Lipscomb students right now that this morning. I just did like a 30-minute mini sermon with them just about their future
Cool.
and destiny. And
Yeah.
so think about, we're pastoring a church, the flood happens. I'm with Chris Williamson, Scott Rowley, all these big churches, and our church in St. Louis was flooded. So they look at me, I'm in this meeting, the smallest church, we got 25, 30 people, and they go, Rowley looks at me, Scott Rowley looks at me, and goes, hey, Whitney, why don't you lead us in flood relief? So think, I'm pastoring a church, commuting to St. Louis to pay the bills with my insurance business, and launching One Gen.
And a father again and a husband.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
We do that.
and then I say yes, and I come home and tell Elaine, and it was like, she wasn't very Christian.
That's terrible. I am a Christian. I was a Christian. But he told me that, and I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, you're
Yeah.
going to do, like, you have so much free time. Are you kidding? So he did. And just to let you know that the doctors think that that's how the cancer started, was because of the mold in the homes. So
That really started One Gen on its journey, honestly. And then, so we like the beach and the water. It's just a way for us to unplug, and we kind of hear we really hear God well there.
because we're so busy that it's like completely, you stop and you just can really hear God, because he's always speaking, right?
Sure.
But it's like we don't hear him because all the other stuff going on. So
Mhm.
So
at the beach, we really do.
So I've had cancer now. We're pastoring a church, running One Gen. One of my best friends in the world, the couple that was just here, we were sitting on the back of a deck in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and he just looked at me and he's crying. He said, man, I don't want you to die.
Mhm.
That's a heavy conversation
Yeah.
at 52 years old. Or 50, yeah,
You were
54.
52 when
52,
you had the
yeah.
cancer.
And so he said, God's hands really, he goes, you're a great pastor and all that. He said, but man, God's hands really on One Gen. I think you need to figure out what you're going to do. And I had this hubris, like, well, I can do both, and thank God that God dealt with my hubris without just annihilating me or something.
Yeah, that's the kindness of God.
Yeah, the kindness of God.
We all kind of deserve that annihilation,
Yeah, amen.
So for him to do it kindly and
Yeah.
gently,
So
is
they
just,
all leave it.
It was in October when
Yeah.
we were there by ourselves.
So then we go back by ourselves, and we're in the. I come out in the water, and many times you'll find us crying in the water at
I
the
am
beach.
bawling.
Yeah.
And he comes out, he goes, what is wrong with you? And I just felt like God was asking us, when are we going to trust him?
Mm.
When are we going to lay down the insurance business and just go full force into One Gen and truly trust him? And this was October
And we're
of
past,
2013.
and we're pastoring a church, and we had a 5 and 5 lease, so 10-year total lease. So we're almost 8 years into the lease, because I was just really mindful that I did not want that to go under, because was so hard to rent a space because so many churches belly up and don't, you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't want to bring a black eye to God in any way, shape, or
So we
form.
want to honor our commitment.
Yeah. And we want to honor that commitment. So I just looked at Elaine and I'm like, instantly said, I know what we're going to do. So, I mean, we're in the water and I go, we're going to go back and we're going to merge the church. And in 2 years, when the lease is up, we're going to walk away and we're going to run one gen full time. And she went, okay.
Wow.
Well, and so that was October, right? So we decided that November 1st, we found our first warehouse space for one gen. So we leased that November 1st. We were so excited. This was 2013. That was November 1st. December 31st, 2013, he was diagnosed with stage 3 throat, tongue, and lymph node cancer. And I was like, God, like this was huge to us because it was a $2,000 payment for a lease, right? And it was like, if it didn't come out of one gen, like we were paying for that. And I was like, what in the world happened? Like we trusted you. And then, it was just, I can tell you story after story. It was miraculous of his whole cancer journey. It was total miraculous.
So that whole process, man, was so crazy because, just on so many levels in that. So let me step back a little bit. So we moved here, right? And we were unpaid, unannounced youth pastors because they believed their daughter was going to lead a youth revival. So they weren't going to hire a youth pastor.
Yeah. Well, no need if their daughter's going to come do it. Yeah.
And so,
for 13 years.
Yeah.
Sure.
So we moved here to start a church. I am not ordained. We apply for a 501c3, which they say never happens. We get it first shot.
Really?
Approved church. So we're here 3 years or so, and we're in a meeting with a bunch of pastors. And Empty Hands Fellowship is a 501c3, and it was created by pastors for pastors. And we're in a meeting in a church we're having lunch one day with some pastors, and Scott Rowley asked me, he said, Whitney, we never heard your story. So I start telling the story about the dysfunction of what happened to us when we left and all that. And John Stearns at Vineyard and Scott Rowley, who was in Christ Community at that time, they said, we want to ordain you. So Empty Hands Fellowship that year, the Saturday before, so it was right before Good Friday, the week before. So right before Palm Sunday. And anyway, they came to our church. Chris Williamson led it. And so my ordination certificate signed by 13 different denominations.
That's pretty cool.
Isn't that cool?
Which was
That's
a validation
unique,
of one gen, right?
Like
Eliminate denominationalism.
That is
So
cool.
it was like God, I still get to this day because once again, the imposter syndrome and everything. And here's these guys that I so looked up to. And I've got the smallest church and I've have all these voices in my head, like you're a failure, and all, and you know the deal, man. Anyway, if you're in ministry, that just happens.
Sure.
But that validation was so big. So then imagine, 5 years later or whatever, I come back from a beach trip and I start saying, we're going to merge. I start actively and we connect and merge the church. And I had some pastors look at me like, dude, have you lost your mind?
We're stepping down, right? From
Sure.
the church to do one gen full time.
So did you mean you're merging that with another existing
With
church?
another
We did
existing
with the
church.
existing church, with us having in mind
Yeah.
that we were going to step away and let them just take
it over.
Yeah.
So we could run one gen. Because
Yeah.
I wanted, so that's what we did. And then when we stepped away completely, they were like,
They thought we lost our minds.
you were pastoring a church. Now you're going to run a food ministry. And I'm like, dude, but you don't understand. I can pastor more people in parking lots
Yeah.
than I ever will in any building, ever.
Wow.
And people do call it their church.
Yeah, if we're really, we just feel called to lead people into the kingdom. And how do we teach people to engage our communities at a high level on a consistent basis?
And to get out of the walls of the church and get out in the community and
100%.
truly serve, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and again, not only for yourself, but I love what you said about empowering others to do that. I think that's an opportunity that like, man, like I want to raise my kids like that.
Yeah.
I want to raise my kids looking for an opportunity to serve people outside the walls of the church, and I've been, talking about the multi-denominational thing, in my compared to where I grew up in the Church of Christ, and then even 10 years of vocational ministry, I've been a Baptist in Assemblies of God, and I've kind of some pretty extremes from one another. I just think that's really unique to your ordination, and how cool is it that like in seeing all these other different communities of faith like bouncing around, I'm like, well, the main thing is always the main thing.
Right?
Yes,
Come on.
Right.
Yes.
I know I feel a little scared. I'm
That's
doing
right.
the thing where I start talking and then I give up halfway.
Yeah. No,
it's been a couple
classic.
episodes since
You
it's
just got to
happened, but
bear
it's
with
happening
him.
now.
He always lands, so it's all good.
That sounds like us.
Yeah,
I'm all over the place.
We
Go
do
for
it
it.
too.
No, I think that you guys, like just sitting here, I can feel that you guys are passionate about like the things that I want to be passionate about. If I can just make it personal, but I think the things that we should all be passionate about as followers of Jesus, of like not caring so much about what the sign says on in front of the church, but like are we empowering one another to go be the hands and feet of Jesus, and to do it with ministry in mind. That simple question of like, man, can I pray for you? Can I introduce you to the King of Kings today for just a few minutes? So I don't know.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm sorry, you were about to talk, and I'm sure it was going to be amazing.
You go right
okay.
ahead.
So it's funny you mentioned that. And even though you felt like that it was a clumsy revelation, I didn't think it was, because I was thinking the same thing. Like the fact that you're not just ministering to people who need food, you're ministering to volunteers, to people who are being given an opportunity to pass it forward, to practice their faith and to serve others. And like we were talking about before, you're best ministered to and you're ministered through. You're giving people an opportunity to be ministered through, which in turn is giving them an opportunity to be ministered to. And I know that I actually know several volunteers that have come out and worked at One Gen Away on a Saturday. I go to a church in Spring Hill called the Refuge Church, and we've had, my father-in-law, my wife has been out there and has helped, load shopping carts and pray with people, and they always come back just completely like filled up, like like rejuvenated with the Spirit, because they got to look at people who didn't have food and pray with them and see their faces light up, see just how their one little interaction on a Saturday morning, impacted somebody's day for sure, but likely their whole week and month. I think that it's really cool that you have an organization that isn't just focused on serving the needy. It's recognizing that everybody's needy. Everybody needs Jesus and needs the Spirit, and you guys are providing that for more than just people who need food.
Yeah.
I was going to say that, I think it's interesting because we love for people to bring their whole families. Like, our grandkids come. When they were 6 months old, they were doing it with us, because it's so important for us as parents, as grandparents, to teach our kids it's not about you, right? To not look at yourself, especially teenagers. You know how they get, and it's all, but to look at other people and to serve somebody else unconditionally. And when those people see the kids and they just light up, because they might not have seen their grandbabies in a while, or and
my son has been out there and helped with that, and he's 7 years old, and he comes back and he just, Dad, I talked with this guy, or I prayed with this, and
it's great.
It's like, that's my 7-year-old that y'all are given an opportunity to experience Jesus. So thank you.
Well, no, man. But that's how we further the kingdom, right?
Yes.
It's become, where do you go to church? Shouldn't we be asking, where do you do church? Not where do you go to, where do you do church? And thank you, because that's the first time I've ever said that. So thank you. That was great.
That was a good squeeze. That was
good.
Good job. Yeah. So
and we've got it recorded. So
so you can watch it anytime you're feeling down.
Anytime say, see, I do
remember this.
But where do we do church? And so we have this, to me, we are sitting on the most fertile ground for the gospel. But my concern is that the bride of Christ, as usual, is going to miss it. And I say that with all, because, man, I pastored a church, so I feel like I've got a little more liberty to be a jerk about some of this stuff, more so than others maybe. But we have a generation of kids in college right now that are motivated to do something. And what we're saying is, okay, but wait, we got to get you in a building first so we can train you. When did the disciples get saved?
Isn't that a great question?
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
It's
don't want
like
to get
we-
too far ahead of you. You're
but
onto something.
it's like we've got to teach you our way so you can go, what? Dude, we got a crazy story one time, Columbia again. This bus shows up, 50 people, 60, 70 people.
They just come
Just show up. We don't know who they are. I go, where are you from? They go, South Dakota.
with teenagers.
Who shows up in Columbia,
teenagers.
Tennessee from South Dakota?
How did they even?
They
It was a
just-
Lutheran church on a mission.
They heard about us
they
and
saw
wanted
us
to come
online
and serve.
just showed up. They came to Nashville to
From
do
South
mission.
Dakota.
So they come back to me. They come back. When this lady comes back that leads it, she goes, hey, I just have to tell you, one of the groups of our kids just went and loaded a car and they asked the guy if there's anything to pray with. This guy says he has cancer. And we have a kid that's an atheist. He prayed for the guy with cancer.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, how cool is that? This kid's an atheist and he prays with a guy to be healed of cancer.
Totally cool.
Only God could do that kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. Now, if you walked into a church and said, how did you dare let him pray? He's an atheist. I'm like,
Yeah, he probably wouldn't be invited to come up and
Yeah,
lead
I
like
mean,
a
yeah.
communion prayer or something
Yeah,
like
you know
that
what I
in
mean?
a
So it's
church.
like-
but like,
and once again, man, I'm
Don't get
cool
on
with,
too-
I know,
Calm it down.
I'm good.
wait, I'll go there with you if you want to go.
Logan's getting fired up. I'm like, whoa.
But
whoa.
no, seriously, dude. I mean,
Step it
but
back a little
if
bit.
these kids want to go out and do something impactful for a community, why in the world are we not leading the charge for that to happen?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
If we want them in the kingdom, we want them to be engaged in the kingdom. And honestly, we need to be more engaged in our communities.
Mm.
Why don't we let them lead us out there?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not leading, but you know what I'm saying? They
Yeah.
feel they're leading.
Yeah.
It's like learning. I feel like I need to write a book called Leading from the Rear,
Mhm.
because you always think you don't always have to lead from the front.
Yeah.
Right.
You can lead. Sometimes you have to lead from the back because you see more,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
So they think they're leading, and they are in a sense, but really we're still controlling and leading it
Right.
Sure.
because we're guiding them, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's how Jesus is with us sometimes. You know, it's like he's leading us from the rear. We know he's in front, but he's allowing us, isn't he, in life?
That's it, man.
Just take steps every day, right? And you're
It's
just
true.
like, hey, man, I think this is what God's telling me to do.
Yeah.
Well, and even like your volunteers, like it's not, you don't have what I'm assuming, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have a sign up sheet that's like only Christians can serve, right?
We don't even sign up anybody.
Because the reality is that like the Christian faith does not have like exclusive rights to people who like to help people.
No.
You know, the world is full of people who actually want the world to be a better place. And so what an opportunity for somebody who's not a believer or even a full-blown atheist to
Yes.
come in and serve people, and you get to offer them an opportunity to do it in a way that is, you know, that's pointing to God. And so an atheist who prays for somebody, maybe he walks away thinking, well, who the heck did I just pray to, you know? And then that initiates a follow-up conversation like, hey, like, you know what I mean?
He's in a bus with 50, 60 people that love God. You
Right,
know what I mean? Like,
right.
dude.
Yeah.
And he just experienced God speaking through him, whether he knew it or not.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, I think it's huge. It's just, so that's where our passion is now. I talk a lot about, you know, when do we transition one gen to the next leadership? And I'm in a phase of my life where I get to pass a lot of batons, man.
Mhm.
And there's only two ways to screw that up. You either drop the baton or get out of your lane, which means you hold on too long.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we've seen too many transitions where they hold on too long. And you're disqualified when you hold on too long.
Mhm.
You know, you look at a relay race, man, drop the baton, you're disqualified.
Sure.
Hold on too long, get out of your lane, you're disqualified. So there's only two things we got to get right. Know when to let go and
Stay in your
don't
lane.
drop it.
Hmm.
That means preparing the person that's receiving it and you being prepared so the exchange is right. And so that's where we're at in our life now. How many batons can we pass in this phase of our life in ministry? I mean, we still lead one gen and we are
Always have
we
been
are having
involved with
an
one gen.
active conversation about who will be the next one. I know I'm coming close to what I was supposed to do with one gen.
Wow.
And we will stay plugged in one way or another because I believe we're supposed to protect the why,
Mm-hmm.
but it's time for somebody else to lead the how, when, and where.
Mhm.
Just listening to your story, you know, of what you've told us, this theme of like trusting God is apparent, and God's patience with us and how He allows us to trust Him. It's like hiking up a mountain. there's the plateau and you look up and you're like, oh, I'm not there yet.
Mhm.
And then like further levels of trusting God. But I can imagine in this season of handing something off, it requires a new level of trust
Yeah.
in the Lord. So I wonder what he's, speaking to you guys about right now, in this newer season.
Yeah, and there's a greater difficulty to that almost in trusting, because the first trust is demonstrated in God, what do you want me to do with my life? And I'm going to trust you to work it out. The second one towards the end is, God, what do you want to do with what I've already done in my life? And how do you want to continue that? So it's almost like after years of pouring yourself into it, now that's a little bit harder to let go.
Sure.
And so how are you guys doing with that?
I think
Well, no, I'm just kidding. No, we're definitely trusting God day by day to give us the right timing and everything and the right people in place. And I'm just telling you right now, like we couldn't do what we do without our team. Our team is incredible. And we've gotten to the point, they're so great, the people in place right now, that we can leave, like we can go on vacation, not even have to think about one gen. They are totally capable.
That's awesome.
And do it with excellence. So
how many people do you have on your team?
14 total in 3 states.
That's in 3 states.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but back to your question about that, to be completely transparent, I'm a control freak. If you run something, you are a control freak. But you just got to be real with yourself. I'm learning more and more as I get older. I just need to be real with who I am and my flaws, my weaknesses. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the next 3 to 4 years to keep speaking to myself what God's telling me to do, so that I can believe it and that I do it. Does that make sense? So it's like scripture. It's like I meditate on scripture till it just gets so ingrained in me that becomes who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing right now is I keep telling myself, it is my responsibility, because I'm steward. I hold my hands like this a lot because I have to visually see that I'm stewarding this thing called One Generation Away. We're the founders. God allowed us to birth it. It's just like kids, man, but we don't control them. We have to let go of them and let them go live their life. So there's coming this day when I use the analogy, we're building Cape Canaveral. And when the rocket's on the launch pad and it starts counting 10, 9, 8, it's my job to hand the button to someone else to push it to launch the rocket.
Wow.
And I'm totally cool with that, because I'm
building that foundation.
I'm build that foundation in me that's what I'm supposed to do. And I know that's my responsibility. But I know that if I try to push that button, we could have a faulty launch. I'm not supposed to be that person.
Yeah.
And I'm really good with that, because I feel like then it's going to free me up to do what God wants me to do next. And there is a next. So I already I feel like I know what I'm supposed to do next. In a business world, it's about, man, we need a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. But then in James, you open up James and it says, hey, don't even try to tell me what you're going to do tomorrow.
Right.
Who are you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's the wrestle of that. So I use a phrase, etched in jello. Like a lot of what we do is etched in jello. It wiggles, it jiggles, and it's going to be moved.
Yep.
To the best of my ability, it's not etched in concrete by any means. The only thing etched in concrete is Jesus is Lord, right? That's settled. But the rest, it's going to move and jiggle. So to the best of our ability, I feel like I know what God wants me to do next. And I think where founders get screwed up is there's not a next. It's not just planning of letting go, but planning of what am I going to do after I let go. So I would encourage people that are in a phase of something like that to not just be so focused on am I going to give it to, but what do you want me to do after I leave?
Mm-hmm.
So I believe there is, there's that song out there, about, I don't want to be, about legacy. And I'm like, I believe we should be talking about legacy. I want a legacy of the gospel. I want the legacy in my family to be the gospel. The legacy isn't remember me. None of us are going to be remembered past our great-grandchildren. And barely they'll remember, right?
Right.
Just get over it. It's okay. But legacy is not a bad word. Like my 12-year-old grandson was like, hey, Grandy, one day I'm going to run One Gen, but I'm going to take it international. And I'm like,
that's what we want.
If a 12-year-old grandson of ours dreams like that at 12, Whether he does it or not, I don't care. But him to even think like that and talk like that tells me that we're leaving a proper legacy,
Yeah.
right?
That's good.
That is good.
So
Yeah.
so the transition isn't about me or who takes over one gen. It's about, am I leaving a legacy for the gospel that's been lived out accurately? Moses passed the torch. Jesus passed the torch. I mean, everybody's passing something down. Caleb, I'm 80 years old. You promised me my mountain. I want my mountain, you know? So I just think you got to look at it like, this is never about us. It's about the people that are around us.
Yeah.
Being poured through so you can pour in. You know what I mean?
Love it.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
that's,
love that.
that's legacy, right? And so that's what I'm doing. And man, I still might screw it up. I hope not. God, I pray not. But I'm telling people that we love, we're telling them what our plan is. I just shared it with our board. I mean, laid it out
Our
before them
staff
in a
and our board
strategic
about
plan.
us, you know, succession.
That's good.
And our
Sure.
staff
But
is
that's
like,
that
you
holds
know,
me accountable,
Yeah.
right? To some people to
They
say,
need to
man, I
know.
said this, I put it in writing.
Yeah.
Good.
It needs to
And it's
happen.
like a 5-year plan, you
Yeah.
know, so 5 to
That's-
7 year plan.
that's
And how
good.
that plays out, I don't know exactly. I mean, this is how I see it now. And
It's
but
funny that we've never talked about it before. Like this is the first time that we vocalized it in our strategic plan and us taking it to the board and everything. So it was kind of like, you know, people were crying, you know, we're just like, okay, you know, it's not like we're leaving
It's
tomorrow.
not happening
Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
You
It's
know,
like, you know,
And I
this-
mean,
yeah.
you know, and
got
the-
a while, but
And the fact that they're crying, you know, that's like, that means you're doing something right. You know what I mean?
instead of them kicking us out,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
well, it's just and the cool thing about it is the thousands of people that have served with us or are going to serve with us, and that some on there, like I met some, we did an event the other night and these 3 women were outside. I'm talking to them. Like, we volunteer with you all the time. And then I'm like, oh, what a jerk. I mean, we literally see
There's
hundreds
so
of
many
people
people,
every
which is
Saturday.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Because
And
we're volunteer led, right? Like we couldn't do what we do without our volunteers,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
again, we have a great board as well that
Mhm.
keeps us on the straight and narrow.
so I know, and I know there's probably a lot more we could talk about. And if people do watch this and don't send you hate mail, well, maybe we'll do another one and talk about other stuff
We
too.
do have to tell them what One Gen does as well, like
Yeah.
not just the distribution.
So we do distributions also. We also go rescue food 6 days a week, so that would be thrown away from grocery stores.
Oh, wow.
Or-
I actually I was
or
curious. I was like, how do
restaurant.
you guys acquire all
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
food
Or
that you
restaurant.
distribute?
Okay.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
now the food that we give away on Saturdays is different. It is we purchase that food. So we purchase a truck full of food from Second Harvest, and in Tennessee is what we do, and
Mhm.
then we distribute that on Saturdays. But during the week,
Well, in the out of town distributions, we
do it from
purchase
our warehouse.
we
too.
purchase food from Fresh Point, so they donate like all the potatoes, and we purchase the rest at
Oh, wow.
wholesale. And then a lot of the canned goods we buy, and then some of the other snacks and things we've gotten for free,
Purchase, though,
basically.
too,
Yeah, no,
different
just
things.
freight.
But you're right.
Yeah.
true.
So we do that. There is food we do purchase, but rescued food is just completely donated from grocery stores. And
Which I think is so awesome, because what people don't realize is what we rescue 6 days a week, that's on someone's table that evening. So our drivers pick it up and they take it into Nashville, really all over Middle Tennessee. And they give that to different homeless shelters, different pantries, different, even like elderly high rises will go and they'll open up the truck and let them come and shop for free.
Wow.
National Food
Places like,
Project and
Bridges
Bridges
Domestic Violence
Domestic
Shelter.
Violence,
Sure.
like
Wow.
places like
all
that.
of those. So that food is on someone's table that evening.
That's awesome.
And then we just started the doorstep pantry, which you can talk to them about that.
Yeah,
about the
and by the way,
transportation.
too, and one of the things is we're in school systems. I mean, the schools call us, the police department, the fire department. We've infiltrated every phase of our society. I don't want to say infiltrated, sounds bad, but
No, but we help. We help, right?
You
Like with
see-
emergency food boxes. So the social workers know like who the families are that need help.
Mhm.
And backpack meals, that's great, right? But yet the whole family's hungry. So there's a story that we heard about this one child in Franklin that went home, took his little fuel bag and his backpack and took it home in his backyard and buried it so he'd be able to eat over the weekend.
Wow.
So the whole family wouldn't take all of the food.
Hmm.
So we know like we're in contact, I should say, with the social workers, and they'll come and they'll grab a big, 20 pound box of food, which is like non-perishables. So they'll be able for the whole weekend to be able to eat
Wow.
for the families.
Yeah, I mean, but the rescuing of food is such a big deal because it would just get thrown away and it's
Mhm.
perfectly edible.
Mhm.
So how we can do that, that's just a great gift of ours. And then we found out that about 30% of the people we serve are transportation insecure. So DoorDash reached out to us. They have a program where they would deliver food like to needy families for free through the
Really?
DoorDashers. Like they would do the same thing, text them,
They
I'm on my
did that
way.
since
Wow.
2018, and they just changed. So now they're charging, but
Okay.
but
so
still, they still a great.
They gave us
Yeah,
a grant.
no, I
but
wouldn't, I
great
wouldn't think
idea.
about
but
that.
for us, what if we got church people to be
Mhm.
the dashers?
Yeah.
And they know you're coming and you knocked on the door and said, hey, is there anything I can pray with you about today?
Pretty cool, man.
Because you could use all your
How cool is that,
volunteers,
right?
Yeah, very
People
cool.
in the church that want to help,
then-
not knowing what to help, they can take the food to these people and say, hey, if you need other, like we collaborate with other nonprofits and look, we're just the church and say, hey, is there anything we can pray with you about? What's your need? And well, we know somebody that can help with that need,
Cool.
and then, hey, can I invite you to church? I mean, think about that. It can go, and that's what we're wanting to take just all over the country,
Mhm.
basically, too.
And once again, this isn't, and people they're really going to just flip out right now
Oh,
when I
Lord.
say this. She's already grabbed my leg. I didn't even say anything.
Bless
I
him,
know, but
Lord,
when you
bless
say
him.
I feel
that
like I
you're-
want to grab his
He's-
hand or something. I don't know what's coming,
He's
but I
prepping
don't know.
us. Let me
That's
grab
good.
my own leg.
This isn't to proselytize.
Right.
It's to meet a need of a human being. And I want you just to ask them, is there anything I can pray with you about today? So that they understand you don't have an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You do have an agenda. I want your need to be met.
Yeah.
This isn't about filling your pew.
Mhm.
It's about filling the heart of this person with the
right.
love of the gospel. And then having the courage to say, my church probably wouldn't fit what you want.
Yeah.
And having the courage to say, hey, I know a great church that I think you ought to plug into.
Yeah.
Because it isn't about building a fiefdom. It's about building a kingdom.
Come on,
Thiefdom.
man.
Yeah.
Come on,
Golly.
man.
That's good.
That's good.
And so having the courage to say that, and I know I'm an elder at the church and I want our church to grow, but man, I want our church to grow because we're kingdom minded and the
Mhm.
kingdom's
Sure.
going to grow.
Yeah.
It ain't about where I just need them to be plugged into a church where they're going to get fed
Mhm.
and they're going to attend.
Yeah.
I don't want to assimilate them into who we are.
Right.
Yeah. And then they can
That's
go
not who
out
we're
and
doing.
fulfill the ministry. that
The Holy
God's called
Spirit
them to do.
assimilates them in who they need to be for the
Mhm.
kingdom.
Kind of takes a weight off and a pressure. It's
No,
like
it's getting off
it's
of God's
God-
throne.
yeah,
It's letting him.
it's God's
Dude,
job
take
to
him where he
do what
wants
he's
him to
going to
go.
do.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
our
going to
job.
be who
Just-
I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, just love people, man.
Yeah.
That's what, once again, the pressure. That's why people don't want to pray with people. Well, they're going to ask me, how many people have I led to the Lord? Man, I've led no one to the Lord. I've had the privilege of praying with hundreds, I don't know how many thousands of people to receive Jesus. But
It's not us.
the Holy Spirit drew them.
Mm-hmm.
The Holy Spirit's going to keep them.
Yeah, man.
It's not my pressure to get them to pray with me to receive Jesus.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My pressure is to love them well enough to where they're willing to ask to say, I want to receive Jesus.
Love that, man. There's pureness there. you
Yeah.
know?
Does that make
The
sense?
humility
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just, I'm not all that in a bag of chips, man.
Yeah.
Believe me. And I'm a hot mess but for the grace of God go I. And I'm not saying that so people don't go share, but I hope that frees them up to
Mhm.
not be,
For sure.
you're not
Yeah.
the end all be all.
Yeah.
It's not your responsibility for someone to pray with you to receive the gospel.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to ask and to do it if they want. And if they don't force it down them.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep loving them well.
Yeah.
Well, dude, even as just an observer, even just listening to y'all's story today, it's like I'm now inspired. Like, yeah, man, look at what God has done. It's not look at what
No,
Chris and
it's
Elaine
not
have done,
us.
but like,
God,
It's
believe
never
me.
been the Chris and Elaine show.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
for sure.
no, that's
Yeah.
encouraging, man.
Yeah,
all about God.
he's faithful, man.
He is.
But there is something to be said about obedience. Obedience is the greatest deterrent to the body of Christ today.
Well, maybe you can, as we sort of kind of wrap up here, maybe you can, knowing that, Narrowgate primarily exists here at the lodge to influence the lives of kind of 18 to 25-year-old guys, not limited to,
Sure.
but certainly that's sort of the heartbeat of the lodge. These young men are stepping out of Narrowgate. They're starting their lives as kingdom men. And they may, we talked a lot about the legacy and the passing on the baton, but maybe you could kind of leave any listeners with an encouragement about starting. If God has placed something on their heart, or maybe not, maybe not. There's like this nonprofit thing that needs to be built, but that step of obedience. What would you say is sort of like one kind of final encouragement for anybody that needs to hear it?
Well, first, to me, it starts in your house. So I wrote a book called The Dirty Church, and which is just about the story of one gen. And the back 2/3 of it are all about serving. And I talk about serving basically individually. And I did not serve my wife well. And if you're not serving your spouse, then you're not serving anybody else. If you think you are, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, a lot of truth in that.
Until you do that. So for those of you that are married, if you want a good marriage, purpose to outserve each other.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never have a problem.
It's true.
And God convicted me about Elaine. She went to work at Embassy after Mid-Cumberland, and she had to get up at 4:30 in the morning. And God literally spoke to me and said, I want you to get up and cook her breakfast every morning. And I did. And I was not a good husband.
Yes, you were.
No.
He was.
Jesus laid down his life for us. I can get my lazy you-know-what out of bed and cook my wife breakfast. And it changed. We had a great marriage, but it showed her, I honored her, I loved her. That's honoring another human being. So the best advice I could give anybody, take a step to serve someone else that has nothing to give you back.
Yeah, that's a really good final piece of advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do that. It will change. It will wreck you. It will humble you, which is where we need to be. Stay humble.
Mm-hmm.
Key to everything.
Man.
That's a good word.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to ask
Go
if
ahead.
you guys could just share, either to our graduates or other listeners, man, how can they get involved if they're hearing this and like, man, we want to come volunteer.
Mhm.
Like,
That's
I want to come volunteer. I'm going to bring my kids. Like, let's go.
Great. We encourage families.
Sure.
You can go to our website, onegenaway.com, and on there, all of our distributions are there listed for this year. We go into the second week in December, and then it'll be on there for all of next year. But we would love to have you guys there. You just show up. You don't have to sign up again. And that was on purpose, because you know how I've done Bible studies for years and years. And when you don't do your homework, you don't show up.
Totally.
So when people sign up, not that we would ever know, but if they didn't show up, they'd be embarrassed or feel bad. I'm like, no, you just show up on a Saturday morning, 7:30. Just whenever you can make it, you make it. And we would love to have whole families there, because it really does teach. It's something about the whole family just serving together, and for the kids to see their parents serving, and, it changes them.
I tell people you'll be ruined for life, but I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just wrecks
Great.
you. It's
Love
super
that.
cool. Hey, man, we're grateful for you all.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for Narrowgate. Thank you for what
Yes.
you're doing to grow men for the kingdom. Bill and Stacy, God, amazing. But you guys continuing the mission, moving forward. Thank you for the opportunity to even speak.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I want to encourage you guys, don't quit.
Yeah.
You're making an everlasting impact for the kingdom of heaven. So thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Chris.
thank you guys. I mean, not just for that word of encouragement, but also your model of obedience and integrity and selflessness, and it's inspiring. So
It
I
is.
appreciate the time that you took out of your day to come and talk with us.
We're honored.
Yeah. So we appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
You.
You
Thank
bet.
you.